Hey everyone, it's Frodan here to give you my 5 most OP reroll compositions that are dominating ladder in Set 9's launch week. Before we get started, I want to establish 3 ground rules. 1, try to focus on economy early and don't hold units unnecessarily if it's going to cost you interest points. 2, you're probably going to lose because other people are going to be higher level than you, so don't worry about losing. In fact, try to piece together a 5 loss streak if you can. And 3, remember that you want to stay at a level and don't move up until you hit those 3 stars. This is to maximize your odds of hitting based off of the shop odds. For 1 cost, you always want to stay at level 5. For 2 cost, you want to stay at level 6. And at 3 cost, you want to stay at level 7. Also, make sure to pick the correct legend. I would recommend Twisted Fate for all the Pandora's items or Lee Sin so you can get really powerful augments like Honor Roll or Trade Sector. Let's start things off with Reroll Tristana. Reroll Tristana is a classic 1 cost reroll that wants to not level early because you want to invest all your gold into 3-starring multiple champions. Because of the Reroll trait, which activates based off of having 3 3-star champions or more, you want to prioritize having Poppy, Tristana, and Maokai. Viego is also really nice because he provides some really good frontline, plus gives you an extra source of damage early because Tristana is not actually good at killing units. The priority list for this composition is 1, get Tristana to 4-star by having all of your 3-star units. 2, getting items properly for Tristana and Maokai. And then 3, adding in more gunners with more levels. Remember that gunners is not important until you're able to get that 4-star Tristana first. Let's talk about the buildup of how you get there. 1, you play all these low-cost units like Tristana, Poppy, Maokai, Viego. Then, as you're rolling, you're going to be adding in a Reroll at level 5. When you get to 6, you're going to eventually add another gunner in Jinx. Remember, you want 4-star Tristana before you want your second gunner. At 7, we can add in Jace, so we can start to buff our backline. At this point, it doesn't really matter if we have Teemo or Kled. And remember that Jace really likes having things like Zeke's Herald because he buffs 1 unit to the left and to the right, which is perfect for the R items. Remember to not stack Poppy because if you do end up getting 3-star Poppy and giving her items, there's a chance that she ends up becoming the 4-star unit before Tristana. Not to mention, Maokai is a much better tank at 3-star compared to 3-star Poppy. At level 8, we're going to add in Zeri. And if we have the opportunity to find Heimer, we're going to replace Teemo or Kled with Heimerdinger and a turret. My favorite turret setup is having 2 self-repairs and a Mechanoswarm. The Mechanoswarm helps you with the anti-heal, and the 2 self-repairs help you provide extra frontline. If you already have some sort of anti-heal, you can even just ditch the Mechanoswarm and go for 3 self-repairs. If you have 3 self-repairs, don't be afraid to just frontline this turret, because then it just dies and in 2 seconds resurrects and disrupts a lot of opponents, especially units that really want to execute something in order to get a benefit, such as Darius. In general, when you're playing 1-cost reroll, on a roll with Lee Sin as your legend is going to be one of the strongest starting augments you can possibly get. You get all those free rerolls, and you'll be able to quickly get Poppy, Maokai, Tristana, Viego before you know it. The best combat augment that you can get is long distance pals, because if you're able to position Tristana to get the buff, she's going to get so much immense power and wipe away things. Not to mention your frontline unit is going to be very strong. Here's an example of how you can position long distance pals. And don't forget, you can always just take things like dueling gunners or anything that helps benefit gunners, or just anything that gives you straight up attack damage and attack speed. These are really powerful ways to synergize with Tristana in particular. Here's an example of some late game itemization that you could use for your third items. Maokai can have Bramble Vest because there's a lot of AD. Tristana can have Giant Slayer if you're going against other rerolls. And Zeri can be a secondary source of damage. For fans of 2-cost reroll, consider playing Zed. Zed is similar to Tristana, where if you're able to stack a bunch of Zekes, he's going to be quite unstoppable in the late game because he has so much healing from the Bloodthirster and the Slayers and so much attack speed to help keep him in the fight. However, remember, Slayers are something that you add in later into the game. You're actually not trying to stack Slayers early. Here's an example buildup of how you would get to a Zed board. You start off with playing around Ionia early because Ionia gives you a lot of stability through early stats. At level 5, considering adding a unit like Warwick so you can help support your frontline, and if you find Set, a way that you can get Juggernaut in. If you find Ekko early, you can also play Ekko at 6. And now all of a sudden your synergies are looking very good. This is the board that you want to roll for at level 6 specifically. You're going to hang out on 6 and roll for Zed and Kled 3 only. Don't try to get baited by things like Ekko 3 or Irelia 3 or even Warwick 3. Set 3 is okay, but again, it's something as a luxury item. You're not actually going out of your way to prioritize it. When you get to 7, you're probably going to slowly transition out of all these units. So you go for Katarina, and then you add another Slayer like Gwen. And finally, we add in Shen. If you get a Slayer emblem, the best user of it is generally Katarina. If you do get Slayer on Katarina, it's worth trying to go items onto her. So you want to go for Hand of Justice and Jewel Gauntlet. Most powerful augment to start off with, again, will be Twisted Fate with the Pandora's items, because that way you can get all the swords. I mean, counting it, you need Infinity Edge, Bloodthirster, and 3 Zekes. That's 5 swords. You're not going to get that very easily naturally. So you want at least that this Pandora's items to guarantee it. Other good combat augments are things like Unified Resistance, because you end up lining things up anyways, so you can get a bunch of stats for your Slayers and healing stuff up. Or don't forget that other augments like Slayer's Resolve, and other Slayers related augments can be really beneficial to help pump up that Zed. Don't forget that you're also able to play in Noxus as well as a potential way to make Katarina more of a primary carry towards the late stages of the game. And if you're looking for another unit to play, you can always add in Kale for an extra Slayer, or you can always just add like any kind of Rise variation on 8 because you just have that Invoker available and it gives you a little bit extra mana for your cat and your Zed. If you can get the cat to 3-star, it's also really powerful, and this is usually good enough to win. Remember that Rogue will dash to 4 hexes and try to target the backliners, so you generally want Zed and Katarina not at the edges, but towards the center. Zed and Katarina as rogues can threaten those corner carries like Aphelios, like Xerxes, Tristanas, Azir, you name it. So position Katarina in A3 and A5 to consider the opportunity to snipe the backline units. One of my favorite 2 costs to reroll for is Multicaster's Teemo. The most important thing to prioritize with Teemo is getting him to 4-star and then stacking him with blue buff Gunblade plus a bunch of AP. Don't forget things like Spark on your frontline units so you can get that magic shred. Like most 2-cost reroll, you're going to roll on 6 for Teemo, Taliyah, and Swain 3. You could theoretically go for Poppy 3 and Kled 3, but ultimately these are not the most important units. But remember, with Yordles, it's important to just get to those 3 stars as fast as you can. Here's an example of how you can build up towards a Teemo board. First, start off with really cheap units like Poppy, Maokai, Teemo, and Taliyah. Then next, add in Swain so you can get that strategist going and have a really good item holder for things like Ionic Spark if you do get it. And then at 6, added another Yordle like Kled. It's not important to actually go for 4 multicaster right away. Let's say you roll and you have the ability to pick up Sonas and Vel'Kozes. That's not crucial until later in the game. The most important thing, get Teemo to 4-star. Once you're done rolling for all your 3-stars at level 6, you can move up to 7 and start adding in other things. Instead of Maokai, you can go for Jarvan, so you can get 3 strategists in. And if you're choosing between which multicaster to tech in before the other, it's Sona, so you can get 3 Demacia. Once you get to 8, you're going to go for Vel'Koz and ideally replace Kled with Heimerdinger. With Heimerdinger, I would recommend the turret to either be things like triple self-repair in the front line. This will help you stall and again get the 2-second repair time to give you a lot of front line. Let's say you don't have any form of magic shred, you don't have a spark, you don't have a shiv, you don't have anything like that, you can use a turret to do the same thing as well. Give it 2 shrink modules and a Mechano Swarm. If you're looking for extra units to itemize, you can consider adding things onto Sona, for example, and giving her a bunch of damage. Or you can just give Swain and Jarvan more tank items. In terms of the augments, Pandora's items helps you guarantee those chalices. Again, you're going to need a lot of tiers to make this work. Try to take things that synergize with multicasters, for example, Perfected Repetition, which gives you even more damage every time you cast. And don't forget the good old classic things like Jeweled Lotus that help your abilities critically strike. If you have Jeweled Lotus as an augment, remember you don't need Jewel Gauntlet because your abilities already crit, so instead build other damage amplification items like Giant Slayer and Guard Breaker. By the way, there's a lot of different variations that you can go for multicaster reroll. Teemo just happens to be the stronger variation between him and Taliyah, but you could carry Taliyah, you could carry Vel'Koz, you can even carry Sona, depending on your spot. For fans of Beyblade and want to spin to win, highly recommend picking Garen to get things started. The win condition for Garen is to get him to spin as fast as possible and then heal himself back up with Bloodthirster in order to keep himself in the fight. The best 2 items for Garen are Bloodthirster and Rageblade. From there, you want to be stacking as many Zeeks as possible right next to him. And the ultimate win condition for Garen is just to get to 6 Juggernauts as fast as you can. Remember that Garen is a 3-cost reroll, so you always want to roll at 7 until you can move up to 8 and play 6 Juggernaut. When you're starting off the composition, make sure you pick something like Pandora's items off of the Twisted Fate Legend. That way you can guarantee that you can get these specific items for Garen because you don't really want anything else. Some other really powerful combat augments are things like Gifts of the Fallen, which gives you a lot of damage and stats for being the last one alive, aka the Garen, and anything that gives you a +1 Juggernaut that helps you get to 6 Juggernaut quickly. If you're looking for who to hold the Juggernaut, usually you want to put it on Jarvan. Here's an example of how you can start off your game. If you get Garen out of a box, start by stacking 1 Juggernaut with him as well as a 3 Demacia and guarantee that Garen gets that Radiant item. Remember, since Garen is going to be the one getting Demacia buff, you want to surround the units with him so he's protected as well as getting that extra armor and MR. At level 5, add another Juggernaut or Bastion. At level 6, try to get another Juggernaut so you can get 4. At level 7, you're going to tend to struggle to get that 6 Juggernaut because it requires Aatrox. So unless you're high rolling and hitting that 6 Juggernaut early, you're going to want to flex around some of these other traits. So let's say, for example, at level 7, when you start rolling down, you hit Jarvan, and then you hit in the Azir, you can just play this for a while and eventually replace KO with Sona. Or maybe instead you hit Kaisa to add some supplementary damage. Maybe you hit Urgot and there's a really good Zom Ken mod. Maybe you just hit Teemo 2 and you want to stabilize by having multicasters and strategists. There's another late game example of something you can play if you don't hit 6 Juggernaut. I played 3 Shurima because I hit Azir and I have a strategist combined with Jarvan and I found a random Cassante. But remember, you still want 6 Juggernaut above everything, so ultimately, even though you play something like this, you're still looking to tech in the 6 Juggernaut whenever you can. This is a level 8 board board that's really ideal. You get to 6 Juggernaut and you get as many Zeeks as possible. If you have extra items, you end up giving things to Darius because you end up chasing 3-star Darius as well as Garen. This reroll composition focuses on Ekko and is not popular yet, but I predict that it's going to be one of the strongest reroll compositions as the patch plays out. The best itemization for Ekko is Jewel Gauntlet, Hand of Justice, and Hand of Justice. This is because when you look at the crit chance, it stacks all the way to 100 so that Ekko will guarantee get the crits. From there, you want to stack a bunch of chalices on Lysandra so you can get her to instantly cast, and support Katarina, which is your secondary damage source. From there, you want to find 3 Freljord plus a Bruiser, which is usually Sion on the top end, but it could be a bunch of other units. Don't be afraid of building something like Ionic Spark, even though you have the Shred from Freljord anyways, because you want to be able to get that damage before and after the Freljord Storm kicks in. And if you need extra items, don't forget to always just stack Sejuani with more defensive items that are really good, such as Bramble and Stoneplate Gargoyle. In terms of the build-up, if you can get early Piltover with Ekko, that's really good because you can actually capitalize on selling the T-Hex after you're done loot streaking to get those extra resources. Here's an example build-up that you can do to get to the Ekko and Katarina board. So you start things off with Viego as the item holder. You can have him with the Hand of Justice and the Jewel Gauntlet, or if you hit Cassiopeia too, you can have her hold it as well. Level 5, let's say you find Taric and you're able to tie in the Targon in the Bastion. And at level 6, maybe you find Katarina and maybe you find Ekko. It's totally fine if you play 3 Rogue. Then you can sell Viego and you can play Lysandra. Then you start putting the chalices on Lysandra and then you have the Hand of Justice and the Jewel Gauntlet on Ekko. Then at level 7, maybe you can consider adding in the Freljord like Ashe. Then you finally find Sejuani and you can add her in at 7. And then when you get to 8, finally add Urgot. And this is generally where you're going to be playing until you find better units such as Sion over a Taric. And then because you lose Taric, you can end up replacing Soraka and playing whatever unit you really want to flex in, such as a Noxus unit like Darius. Don't forget that positioning is going to be really important. So you want Ekko to be on the left side here, or down the center if you want to keep it generic and go to both corners. The best augments that you can have are Pandora's items, so you can get all of those chalices and tiers. Things like Gift of the Fallen, so that your rogues can go 1v9. Or Idealism, which is something that gives you a Hand of Justice immediately, and everybody that has a Hand of Justice will get stronger. So those are my 5 most OP reroll compositions that you can play right now in Set 9 launch week. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.